I'm John Travis in Novato, California on the 16th of June in 2026, talking to Steve Bhaerman or Swami Beyondananda in Ashland, Oregon. And he was going to sing Somewhere Under the Rainbow, but we'll let him off on that. So I have known of you since the 70s, a quote of yours that we put in the Wellness Workbook. And I think we finally met in the 80s when you were in Santa Rosa. And we've been sort of bouncing along similar paths ever since, particularly around the COVID era and the craziness that that has led to. But today I want to find out who you are and why, and more importantly, what led you to be the wild guy that you are, the childhood influences, parental effects, siblings, all of the environmental stuff. So people can find out what you do pretty readily, but it's digging down into the dark secrets that I hope you'll share with me. So, where did it start? Where were you born?
I was born at a very early age. I spent my deformative years in Brooklyn, New York.
You did say
But
deformative, right?
I said deformative,
I
yep,
wanted to make sure I
in
caught
a
that.
housing project. Yeah, actually, my dad was a very funny guy. He was not a comedian professionally, but there was always laughter. He was a great storyteller. Um, he was great at dialects, which was really a New York
Uh,
thing. And then I was that kid, the kid that would disrupt the class with humor and all of that. And the way that you know that that's your calling, it's the first time you're in the lunchroom and you make another kid laugh so hard, milk comes out of their nose.
yeah.
That's a sign from God. But like everybody else, I was told to get serious, and I never ever imagined, even though humor has always been part of my life. When I was a kid, the Ed Sullivan Show would be on. I'd tell my parents, "Hey, call me when a comedian comes on." So I always had that. I always been interested in that. And early student of H. Allen Smith, who was my favorite humorous writer when I was a kid. And I never ever imagined that I would do humor as a full-time career. My first career was teaching. I landed in Washington, D.C. when all of the stuff was going on in the late 60s. Uh, I was teaching in inner city Washington, D.C. Started an alternative high school where one of LBJ's cabinet members sent his daughter to our school. So we were being investigated by the FBI, and he'd
How'd
get
that go?
calls. Yeah, it was Stuart Udall, who was Secretary of Interior, and
Yeah.
he would get calls on the White House hotline saying, "Take your girl out of that goddamn school," but he never would. So I was very much involved with the late '60s adventures and early '70s, and then I ended up in Michigan teaching at Wayne State University. I was teaching
Right.
ethnic studies and labor history. That was my background. My background's actually in political science, although I have to confess, I never got far enough in that career to actually dissect a politician. Never quite got to that point. But anyway, I'm teaching at Wayne State. I'm teaching auto workers. It was really good. I loved it. I was very good at it. And a funny thing happened, but I wasn't laughing. The funny thing was they had their tenured people they had to place, and so I got laid off. And the only job I could get at that point, because I had for a year lived on a farm and learned how to operate heavy equipment and so on, I got a job with the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan, doing tree work for the Department of Parks and Forestry. And this was kind of a dark night because here I was, I got a book published by Simon and Schuster. I had been teaching at the university level, and here I was chipping brush for a living every day. But a funny thing happened. They put a new guy with me, Larry Kilsaw, who is a brilliant psychologist disguised as a black truck driver. Larry he had worked at Ypsilanti State Hospital after he got out of the military. He was a prodigy. He was a psychology prodigy. They sent him to study with Bandler and Grinder. He knew neurolinguistic programming before anybody had ever heard of it. So we both come from different planets, let's say, from outer space, and we land at this very ordinary, muggly workplace. And we're both going, "What's wrong with this picture?" And he approaches me and he says, "You're a writer. Let's start a newspaper." So we started an anonymous humorous paper called States Wire Service, which was like The Onion, like the Borowitz Report, like Babylon Bee, a parody paper, but it was for the guys that we worked with. We had a captive audience. Every 2 weeks, the paper would come out, and our slogan was guaranteed to be fallacious if not true. So some of the stuff was the way it happened, some of it was partly embellished, and the other part was completely made up.
And
We
this is
created an,
the
yeah,
Parks Department now that
yeah,
are.
forestry, but part of the Parks Department. And we totally changed the workplace because we had an ongoing interactive situation comedy.
Ha!
And they were characters, they were the audience. And one quick incident I'll report. We had one guy who was he was he was kind of a jerk, kind of loudmouth. And so we created this campaign where he was campaigning for foreman, which was ridiculous, of course. And one day we come to the shop, and there's this guy standing on the cafeteria table delivering the campaign speech we had written for him in the paper. So
And they didn't know who you were.
well, we everybody knew, but we'd write articles every several weeks denying that we were doing the paper.
Oh,
It was very, Larry is a master psychologist and I'm a master humorist. And so um, he and I are meeting every week now to write a book about our adventures, where we did something that could never, ever, ever be done now because it wasn't politically correct.
yeah.
We talked about racism, we talked about all kinds of stuff. But what it did was it showed me, first of all, the power that humor has to break the trance of the mind, to speak truth where truth has not been spoken, and that I was really good at it. And so that was in 1978. 1980, my friend Josh Pokemper and I started a holistic publication called Pathways, which was one of the first holistic publications, kind of like Common Ground was in the Bay Area, Catalyst in Salt Lake City, New Texas and Austin. There were a number of these papers popping up. And um, in our paper, we decided that we needed humor, and the name Swami Beyondananda just kind of came into my head one day.
Oh,
I like to say I got struck by lightning during a brainstorm, and the Swami became our mascot. And every issue of Pathways, it came out every month. In the back cover, inside back cover, there would be the Swami column, and we did like parodies of ads, like we did. Remember Famous Artist School? We're looking for people who want to draw. We did Famous Guru School. We're looking for people who want to draw on higher consciousness. And one of the we had like a testimonial. Dear Swami, loved your leadership training. Please send followers, right? And we had teacher Dr. Heal. We had autism, OUGHT, where you do what you ought to do and
right.
you let people order you around. Everything you always wanted to know about sects.
I think that autism one was what we quoted in the wellness workbook. I'm trying to remember the quote we used, but before I met you, but I think
Yep.
it was that you mentioned it. Well, I want to go back to your roots a little more. Like
Yeah.
other siblings, where are you, birth order, your mom?
Well, actually, I'm the older one. My brother Elliot is 4 years younger. We both have, and as I said, I'm remembering when I was a little kid at my grandparents' little apartment on DeKalb Avenue, everybody sitting around and laughing, 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 laughing.
Uh,
So I was the older one. I was the one that I think the
express.
reason why I didn't, the reason why we've treated neither of us, Ellie, we've both been happily married for over 40 years, my brother and I, uh, and neither of us had kids. And I think it was because my mother tearing her hair out would say, "You should only have children like you when you grow up." So I considered that a curse, and I did not want that to come true. Because we were, I mean, I was a handful. I I was a kid who always spoke my mind. Thank God they didn't have things where they had people on the spectrum, right? Because I
Yeah.
mean, because I had a very unusual mind. I still have 3,000 songs on my inner jukebox, and I still have baseball statistics from the 1950s. And I remember we were with a brain scientist, and she asked me quite frankly, she says, "Do you have Asperger's?" I said, "No, no, it's just regular gas."
Did she get
Oh yeah. So I've been, we li for the first 7 years, we lived in a real neighborhood. In one of these places where, there were stores there were apartments above the stores.
it? Uh-huh.
DeKalb Avenue was a very busy market street. At the age of 5, I remember my dad complained about the bagels. So I walked out the door, walked down the street to Schlucker's Bakery to give them my dad's complaint. And on this very, very busy street with buses and trolleys and trucks and push carts, I was completely safe. Completely safe.
Yeah.
Everybody knew who I was on that street. Then at the age of 7, we moved to a housing project, vertical slum, and I hated it from the very beginning. And I spent 11 years living as a white kid. I mean, now of course, there are other white kids there, but by the end, I was one of the few white kids left in this project and this area.
Mhm.
And you know, you learn a lot growing up in New York in that kind of neighborhood.
I bet.
But you have a 360 degree view, and there's a certain degree of PTSD because you're always looking for stuff to pick up in case somebody hassles you and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We were way ahead. I remember, back when was it? 30 years ago with the punk movement and all this body piercing. I said, yeah, man, we had that in my neighborhood, only we called it stabbing.
So, how was school for you? You said you were a handful and
Well, I went to PS 83, and by the time I was in the sixth grade, first of all, in the sixth grade, uh, the teacher just decided to let me be. It was the library. The school library room was our classroom. So I just read whatever I wanted to read. At the sixth grade, in the fourth grade, me and my friend Paul Goldsmith started a little publication called the Goof Gazette, which was our comedy paper, fourth grade.
oh,
Sixth grade, I was teaching the other kids um, cartooning. And then I went to John Marshall Junior High, um, the worst junior high school in New York City,
mm,
where before we got there, the principal committed suicide because of crime in the school.
wow.
I don't know if you know Phil Goldberg. Do you know Phil? He wrote a book called
Oh,
American Veda. He wrote the biography of Yogananda. He's in that Awake movie that you may have seen. But anyway, so Phil went to John Marshall Junior High as well, and he was there the year before I was when the principal killed himself. The
oh,
year I was there, one of the New York newspapers sent a reporter to do uh, a expose, and he was the undercover teacher and so on. So but in junior high is when I really started to develop my comedic skills, and I did song parodies. And in fact, when I went to visit one of my junior high school friends several years ago, he had kept the scripts that I had written
ah,
from junior high. So that's when I started. But I was always, I was a very alienated kid. Um, and Ended up in high school. I had my own little cadre of clique of kids that I hung out with, but I lived in the projects. I was on the wrong side of Eastern Parkway, on the wrong side of St. John's Place, and no white kids would cross St. John's Place to visit me on the project.
Ah, but you did have a few friends, it sounds
Oh
like.
yeah, my friends were mainly from junior high, and I really didn't start dating until I was in college. I went to Brooklyn College, got to live with my parents an extra 4 years, and I think that was the first time I was ever proactive. And when I got to Brooklyn College, I decided I would do three things. Number one, I would join a house plan or fraternity. Actually joined a house plan in Brooklyn College and a fraternity at City College where my friends went to school. I said I would try out for the baseball team, which I did. Tried out for the baseball team, made the team, but for various reasons never really engaged with it. Some things came up at that point. And I said I would get active in student activities. And so the first event I ushered at Brooklyn College, uh, there was this unknown comedian named Woody Allen
Ah,
who came and like this is 1964, right? And did a show. So I think because of my proactivity, I was graced with grace. And the amazing grace that happened to me was I inadvertently applied to Antioch Putney Graduate School, and without even realizing I applied, I got accepted. And this was a work study program where I spent the summer in Yellow Springs, Ohio, in a very amazing program. I got sent to teach in Washington, D.C. during the time of the Pentagon March and the Martin Luther King assassination. And then I started an alternative school there for because my friend was teaching out in the suburbs. And so there was a period where these amazingly graceful things happened to me, where I got swept into uh, this project and then ended up with a contract, my friend Joel and I just got a note from him just the other day. So I stay friends with my friends forever. Uh, and we got a contract with Simon and Schuster to write a book that was called No Particular Place to Go, Making of a Free High School. And I was the only one of my cadre of friends from high school who actually really left New York City. Um, I couldn't wait to get out. I knew I was in the wrong place.
mhm.
New York was never my cup of tea. So it's almost
And
60 years that I've been out of there.
did that book get published?
Oh yeah, Simon and Schuster. You can find it maybe on Amazon used books. It's called No
Mhm.
Particular Place to Go. It got stellar reviews in the New York Times, in
Wow.
Saturday Review of Books, New York
Mhm.
Review of Books, Washington Star. Really, really good reviews. Um, and it was my first. Uh, I remember I my first job was working as a room service waiter at the Hotel Shelburne in Manhattan. Um, and that was what an education that was. But the second year, I laid myself off because there were people who had families to support, and there wasn't enough business. And I went, I'm not going to take work from them. And I sat down and I said, I'm going to spend the rest of the summer being a writer. And I
Mhm.
sat down and I went, I have nothing to say. So fast forward 5 years, I have a contract with Simon and Schuster, and I actually had something to say. So
Mhm.
that started my writing career 55 years ago or so.
And this was a school that Stuart Udall sent his daughter to?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What happened was my partner Joel was teaching in Montgomery Blair out in the suburbs, and his students prevailed upon him to start an alternative school. There were a number of, fairly radical people there. You may know Norman Solomon. He's lives in Bolinas now, and he ran for Congress in California. He's he wrote the book War Made Easy, that was made into a documentary with Sean Penn. So Norman was one of the instigators. Peter Malakoff, who is a longtime TM teacher and Vedic scholar, he was another one of the instigators. And so because we didn't know we couldn't do it, we ended up doing it. And we set up at DuPont Circle and with flyers. And one of the people who picked up a flyer was Stuart Udall's daughter, who was in most of the kids we had that first year had advanced. They had outgrown school, and so they needed a place where they could engage um, beyond the walls of school. We had amazing resources at first year in Washington, D.C. When people heard about the school, we had what's his name? He wrote the psychologist who wrote, "When you see the Buddha on the road, kill him."
Oh, yes. Right.
Yeah, I'll remember his name. He did biweekly, every other week he did a session. Uh, what was his name? I'll remember it. He did therapy groups at the school.
Uh-huh.
Um, Carl Hess, who had been a speechwriter for Barry Goldwater, had a metal shop, and he taught metal shop. And one of our kids did these amazing metal sculptures that he. So we were a unique feature in Washington, D.C. at that time. And we had a big article about us in the Washington Star because, just like nowadays, everybody's looking for, who are the young people who are making a difference. That was Joel and me at that point. So we were blessed with having a contract with Simon and Schuster to write a book.
And did you have a physical facility for the school or?
Yeah, we used the Friends Meeting House, the
Oh,
Quaker Center, and we had a house in Mount Pleasant. The way that we set it up was that with their parents' permission, the kids could live at the school.
oh,
Yeah. And so I was kind of the sergeant at arms, keeping the crashers away and, managing the facility. Um, in fact, we had two kids uh, who met there and are still married.
uh-huh. So there were like bedrooms and
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, this was like hippie days, right? So I was the person who was trying to keep things clean,
uh-huh.
uh, kick out crashers and make sure that no drugs were at the school. And, if they had a stash, they put it in Rock Creek Park, and that was the end of it.
Uh,
Because we were totally under surveillance. And
yeah.
second year, we had summer after the first year, we had a summer program, and George McGovern sent his son to our summer program.
Ah,
And we had several students whose fathers were, one was at the part of the what's the National Labor Relations Board, another was Federal Power Commissioner. So these were kids who were fairly well-to-do, but they had outgrown school, and this was a place for them.
yeah.
In fact, after that first year, every one of our students who applied to college got into the college that they chose.
Wonderful.
Many have gone on to amazing careers. No thanks to us, but no, they've gone on to amazing careers, and I'm still in touch with several of them.
How long did the school last?
Well, it actually lasted 8 years. I was there for the first 2 years, and if you can imagine being at a project 24/7, after two
Yeah.
years, I was cooked. So we turned it over to a larger project called Special Approaches and Juvenile Assistance. They ran the local runaway house. That was how I met Patch Adams back in,
Uh-huh.
1973 or 72, through all of that. He ran the free clinic in Arlington, Virginia.
Yeah. Wow. So after the school, what was your next stop?
Well, Joel and the second year of the school, I did a field trip, and there was another woman.
It's 1 o'clock.
What?
That was my computer announcing the time. I can't
Oh,
turn
okay.
it off.
The time at the tone will be 1 o'clock. Okay. So anyway, another adult and I chaperoned a trip. We had, I think, maybe six students with us, and the VW bus that we bought as part of the school. We got a grant from the Stern Family Foundation, and we took a trip to the New England and Toronto to visit other alternative schools. And we ended up, one of the schools we visited was in Greenville, New Hampshire, and I liked it there. And so when we got the contract to write the book, I decided that I'm going to move up to live on a farm in Greenville, New Hampshire. And that school ended up moving to Coburn, Pennsylvania, another farmhouse, new community school. And so I spent a year and a half living on a farm, milking cows. That school was kind of more of a refuge for burned out kids. And as part of the refuge, um, we were on farm time. We had electricity, but at night we never used it. We used kerosene lights.
Hmm.
And we cooked with wood stoves and we did all of that. So while I'm working, writing this book that ended up being published in 1972, um, I'm living on a farm. Uh,
Uh-huh.
as a kid from Brooklyn, where the only wildlife we had was pigeons, squirrels, starlings, rats, roaches, and flies, uh, it was quite a thing
Yeah.
to be living in the country. It changed my life forever, and that since that time, I've always had to have nature as part of my life.
Uh-huh. Wow. Yeah, that was the big thing with alternative schools back in the late 60s. I got involved with one up in Baltimore in 72, 71, 72, the Koinonia community. And
Oh, I remember that community. I remember that community.
really,
Yeah, there was a. Now, wasn't there a Koinonia community that was also out in the country somewhere? Maybe in South Carolina,
no,
perhaps?
there was one in Georgia, Koinonia
Georgia.
Farms. This
That's
was
it, Georgia. Yeah,
that was totally separate. This was
got it.
started by a disgruntled chaplain at Johns Hopkins who took over a missionary training center in a big old mansion outside of Baltimore, and we had hippies coming in, taking classes that were extensions from their college and giving them a break from the routine. It was quite an experience. Now it's a wedding facility, but we had a organic garden and a teacher teaching yoga and an older Quaker guy who taught meditation, and it was a big eye opener for me. And I was in my residency in preventive medicine at Hopkins at the same time, so quite the contrast.
Were you involved in any of the psychedelic experiments at Hopkins, or was you were there after that?
And I'm not aware of any at Hopkins.
Oh, that's probably earlier. That's probably mid 60s.
Uh,
In mid 60s. Yeah, that's where it all. Yeah.
John Lilly and Stan Groff and Helen Bonney were at the Maryland Psychiatric Institute out at Spring Grove, uh, and I got hooked up with the graduate student who was there at the time, and had my experience with ketamine after my first marriage ended, and that was about 74. But
Wow. Early on with ketamine.
yeah,
Absolutely early on. Yeah.
so now from the farm, where did you go?
Well, then my book came out, and I went to Washington, D.C., back to D.C. And my brother was living in D.C., and my parents had moved there
Oh,
from New York, follow my brother there. And I ended up going to a party at this wonderful, back in the day. Um, there were a lot of young professionals lived in communal houses in Washington, D.C. And these were
Mm.
pretty, there was one, I mean, so I moved into a place called the Embassy of Atlantis.
Huh.
And it was an Embassy Row right across the street from the Dutch, next door to the Dutch Embassy. Endicott Peabody, who had been a governor of Massachusetts, lives across the street. Frank Sinatra bought a house down the street so he could entertain Spiro Agnew. So we
Huh.
were at the Embassy of Atlantis, and there was just wonderful young professional people there. And that's where I met my girlfriend, Jackie Potter. She was a poet who had just graduated from the early childhood education program at George Washington. And long story short, she had an opportunity in Michigan, and we both went out to Michigan to visit Upland Hills School. So if you want to read a really, really good book, read the book called The Future of Children, which is by Phil Moore, who is the director of Upland Hills School, ran that school for 50 years. And this was an elementary school that defied the stereotype of free schools because all of the structure was in the right place and all of the um, freedom was in the right place. It's an amazing school. Um, he had, Bucky Fuller was his mentor. Bucky Fuller and Krishnamurti were Phil's mentors. And when Gene Houston passed a few weeks ago, Phil posted this whole thing about Gene Houston coming to visit the school. And in fact, she wrote the preface to the Future of Children book that I helped
Mm.
Phil write about his experiences. So we moved to Michigan, Oxford, Michigan, where Jackie worked at Upland Hills School. And when Jackie and I went our separate ways, I moved to Ann Arbor, and that's where I was still working at the weekend college at Wayne State, and Ann Arbor was where I spent my 30s in Ann Arbor, my
Mm.
second adolescence. I missed the first one.
Me
So I
too.
spent my second adolescence in Ann Arbor, and all of the great stuff that I've done, from the Swami to all of that stuff, freelance writer, books, really was born in those 10 years I spent in Ann Arbor.
Uh-huh. Now, where does Trudy come into the picture?
Okay. So in at the end of 19, I was working as a freelance writer in Ann Arbor. We're helping people write books. And I went to an event. I'd been to the S training back in the late 70s. And in spite of all of the stuff about it, I got great value out of
Yeah,
that.
I did too. The organization is like, whoa, but the
Yeah, yeah, I've could,
material
yeah,
was very
so
useful.
I never went for all of the other, the cult aspect of it, but
Yeah.
I got great value out of it. And so I went to a seminar or an event, late in 1984 that Werner Erhard led with Fernando Flores, called, On Communication.
Was it in San Francisco?
No, this is in Detroit. They did
Oh,
one
because
in
I went to
Detroit.
one in San Francisco that they did.
Yeah. And it changed my life because of the challenge. And the challenge was, what are you really here to do? And how long are you going to wait to do it? So I made a vow that I was going to do comedy as a full-time career without having a clue as to how I would do that. Um, and so from there, everything unfolded. I got invited to do an event in Redwood City where I did Swami's first comedy performance.
Mm.
Um, I came back from there and I'm at a party and I see this woman who looks really familiar. And I say, "What's your name?" And she decided to give me a name she hadn't used in years. And the name she gave me was Trixie Trudy Trueheart. I go, "Oh, I know you." And I remembered that we had met at a party in 1976.
In
The party,
DC.
it was like the day that I had my final breakup with Jackie. I
Huh.
couldn't go a winter night in Michigan, very gloomy. I couldn't drive all the way back to Ann Arbor, so I remembered a friend was having a party in Duck Lake. I called, found a payphone at 1 a.m. Hey, is that party still going on? Yeah. I go to the party, I meet this woman, and we play the African drum box for hours together without saying a word. That was Trudy.
Ah,
That we didn't see each other for 9 years
ah,
because the time wasn't right. We meet again in 1985, and she made an offhanded suggestion. Hey, she was a dancer at that time, a really brilliant, self-trained dancer. She said, hey, why don't we do shows together at Comedy and Dance? Her suggestion. And so that launched a 40-year adventure of traveling Swami and Trudy show.
ah.
Couldn't have done it without her, and we're still doing these shows.
I didn't realize she was the dancing part of the show. Huh.
Yeah, she had started off with a Chinese ribbon dance, which we called the audience tenderizer. And then she had some other dances, the interpretive dance that she did. Um, the other thing is that she imported these beautiful hand-beaded scarves from Egypt. So the joke was that Swami was the lost leader for Trudy scarves because I would show up, I'd get us, I'd get booked at an event at a church at a conference. Trudy would sit at her table, and women would just be so attracted to these amazing handmade scarves. So
Mm.
from that, we traveled in our van and trailer for about 4 years, moved to 3 years. We moved to Santa Cruz in time for the earthquake,
Oh,
1989. We were in
yeah.
Santa Cruz. And then we were visiting a friend out in the hill country in Texas, and the guy said he had these beautiful homes, and we were considering, well, maybe moving there because we got kind of shaken up by Santa Cruz, and his homes were just terrible. But the last day he took us up the hill to this place he was caretaking, and I went, "We'll take it." He goes, no, 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 this home is the Andersons' vacation home. I said, well, ask them if they'll rent it to us. And it was a beautiful California home plunked on top of a hill in the Texas Hill Country overlooking, 250,000 acres of wilderness and a huge lake, Lake Buchanan. And turned out that the people were willing to rent it to us, and we were there for 8 years, and we bought the place eventually in
Wow.
the midst of the Texas Hill Country. And the only reason we moved was because well, other than the fact that it was just too hot in the summertime, and every summer every August we'd go to the Bay Area, but we couldn't get anyone to move out there. We didn't have community that we liked, and so we ended up moving to Santa Rosa in 1999, which was so much, where our basic peeps were. Um, and that's how we got to California. But we were in the Texas Hill Country, for 8 years. Great place to travel from. We, do our road trips. And down right on the lake was the Vanishing Texas River Cruise. Um, and Ed Lowe, bless his heart, what an amazing character, ran the river cruise. He's just this very dry Texas sense of humor kind of guy, right? So we get back from a tour, and the river cruise tour, it was called the Canyon of the Eagles, and they showed where all the eagles nested. So um, Don Henley from the Eagles came there to do this thing there, and he looks up. Ed is telling me this. He said he looked up at your house and he said, "I want to go up there," but we weren't home, so he didn't. But he would have offered to buy that place, and we wouldn't have sold it
Huh.
at that point. It was that beautiful, just an amazing, magical place. But again, everything has its time. So, and we loved being in Texas. We loved the Texans. We loved their sense of humor. Very dry sense of humor, um, and you know, friendly people. Um, and humor was kind of our currency in this little town of of Burnet, Texas, where we lived.
Uh-huh. Where is the hill country?
Well,
West.
the hill country is around Austin. This was
Uh-huh.
north and west of Austin, directly north of San Antonio.
Okay, that's
And
that.
LBJ, bless his heart,
Right. That's his territory. Yeah.
yeah, he when he was congressman, created this thing called the Lower Colorado River Authority, which was like the Tennessee Valley Authority,
Uh-huh.
where they in the Lower Colorado River that used to flood all the time, they built these series of lakes, and so Lake Austin, Lake Travis, Lake Buchanan, all of these lakes were part
Oh,
of that.
didn't know that. And that's a
And
different
Austin,
Colorado River than the one that goes through California.
that's a different Colorado
Yeah.
River. And
Uh,
in fact, there was only one natural lake in Texas.
ah,
These were all man-made lakes. And, this it was really interesting to live there and be in nature. We were surrounded by nature. Um, we had these vultures that liked landing on our deck because they could bathe in our little big uh, um, watering dish that we had for the plants. And
ah,
so we had, big time nature around us. And it was very educational. It was really good. Um, in fact, we played we love Texans. We played at the Kerrville Music Festival one year, and after Swami's performance, this one Texan comes up to me and says, "You know, you know how to tell people what they don't want to hear in a way that they want to hear it."
ah,
So I've always
what a
taken that as
compliment.
a positive. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Wow. So from there, you went to Santa Rosa?
Yeah, we were there for, well, most of 25 years, most of 25 years. We had a big place that we were renting and we let go of that and had various smaller places, lived in the North Berkeley Hills for 3 years. And
Yeah, I saw last place I saw you was that beautiful spot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we've been very lucky in that I think it really happened. It really started for me when I lived on the farm in Pennsylvania, that I would never be far away from nature. It's always been the case. Always
Hmm.
been the case. So we're lucky where we are right now, that we're in a beautiful place in Ashland. We're surrounded by green trees. It's kind of hot today, like 97 degrees, but
Wow. Yeah.
we don't have our air conditioning on right now, and I'm perfectly comfortable.
Uh-huh. So what what was your um, inclination that something was off in 2019 with COVID?
Well, first of all, I've always been politically independent. My first political education, well, first I was a political science major, okay, um, in at Brooklyn College, and then going to DC, my first year teaching in the Urban Teaching Corps. Larry Cuban, who was in charge, gave us a unit to teach on the Kennedy assassination. Now, this
Mm,
is 1967, when all of these books are coming out with alternative views. And at that point, I go, oh, well, I can't say what actually happened. I know what didn't happen, and that was the official story.
yeah.
Meanwhile, another of the teachers there, whose name won't mention his name, so I think he later became, yeah, worked for the CIA and so on. He was kind of the conservative bent, and he downloaded a seminar on the Bilderberg, which is now evolved into like the World Economic Forum, and that was the organization where many of the global decisions were made. So at that point, my political education consisted of that. Then I meet Carl Hess, who had been a speechwriter for Barry Goldwater, who said, "Oh, everything you know about Barry Goldwater is wrong." Carl he was the first libertarian I ever met, but then he and David Morris, who is a progressive, founded something called the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in Washington, D.C., where they had rooftop gardens and trout tanks in their basements and so on. So I had a pretty thorough political education. Uh, when 9/11 happened, I was one of those people who went, that can't be right. So I didn't buy that. And then in 2008, I met Joseph McCormick. And I don't know if you ever met Joseph.
Oh,
He is one of my closest friends still. He was a conservative, um, Christian coalition, Catholic, very conservative Army Ranger, ran for Congress in Georgia, lost the election and went through kind of a dark night, ended up in a cabin in Floyd County, Virginia on retreat. This is in the early 2000s, gets adopted by a band of hippies. And Joseph is now in his early 60s. So his father, as a kid, his father told him, those people, those demonstrators, they hate America. So he meets these hippies and he goes, these people don't hate America. So he had an epiphany. I think he probably had an epiphany. I'm guessing he had an epiphany as well. And he decided that his mission was to reunite America. And he got some funding and he put together these retreats. Imagine leaders of the Sierra Club and um, Move On, Christian Coalition. He got them all in the same room.
mm,
And the um, Michelle Combs and Joan Blades from Move On, Michelle Combs from Christian Coalition became friends. And they started something called Moms Rising. They created a campaign, MoveOn.org and Christian Coalition, to preserve net neutrality, took out a full page ad in the New York Times. So Joseph was already working in this transpartisan domain, and he and I worked together for several years. When he just came to the end of his work here, it just was not the right time to bring left and right together. And in 2015, he moved to China,
mm,
and been living in China. He married a woman who is Qigong master and Oriental medical doctor. And they've got two little boys. My joke is that one's going to be president of China, one's going to be president of the United States. I don't know which
mm.
is which. And so he did a lot of groundwork in this transpartisan movement. So I've always kind of been in that. And when COVID happened, I was like everybody else, put on the blue gloves, put on the special heavy duty mask and so on. Hold on. I got a We got musical background now.
I don't hear it.
Good, I'm glad you don't hear it. I
Yeah,
hear it. Um, it's very distracting to me.
I do hear something now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Hold it for just a second, if you will. Just,
Recording.
yeah. Okay, good. So Trudy and I were like everybody else. But then something happened. I got a call this is probably in the spring of 2020. I got a call from a chiropractor friend who said that his associate in Texas had already seen 35 COVID cases and treated them with whatever protocols he had for whatever other viral things he had. And no long COVID, no hospitalizations, and nobody died.
Hmm.
Oh, what's the protocol? Well, he can't tell anybody. He'd lose his license as a chiropractor or a naturopath. Then I did an interview in my Wiki Politiki radio show with Andrew Saul, who was an expert on vitamin C therapy. And his protocols were used first in China and then were used by the city of New York after the disaster of putting all these people on intubation, right? And so
Terrible.
I started realizing, oh my God, we're being lied to. Andrew Saul said, oh yeah, my stuff's been taken off of, um, um, uh, I think it was Facebook. Facebook
Mhm.
page got locked down. So I'm starting to see all of this. And then the craziness around the masking. And then when the vaccines came out, um, our doctor, he's skilled in many aspects of medicine. He thought maybe the J&J shot would work, but then reports started coming in about um, cardio symptoms. They didn't like that. And so basically, we looked at it and we decided not to take the shot. And we noticed because everything that we had learned in holistic medicine, and then all of the people that we respected all of a sudden are deplatformed as the disinformation does it.
Hmm.
And that's when it started. We went, oh my God, this is some kind of a psyops campaign. They're
Hmm.
using the same kinds of propaganda to promote the shot as they used to promote the Iraq War.
Hmm.
Everybody on every channel is saying the exact same words. And I'm watching many, many, many of the people that we knew just drink the Kool-Aid. And I got drummed out of my drum circle, um, disinvited from parties, um, canceled by people who thought I'd become a Trump supporter, which I
Hmm.
didn't, and on and on and on. And all of a sudden, there's just this craziness, and I don't tolerate cancellation well. I don't tolerate it well. A friend of mine, he should have known better, and he didn't want to talk to me because he got COVID. Not that we didn't. And I just called him. I said, "I'm sorry, homie, don't play that shit. I keep my friends forever." And then we rebooted the friendship that's stronger than ever now.
Mm.
However, um, I'm not interested in converting anybody. And that was what happened, during the entire period, being in that lockdown period. Whatever people said, they said, I just got my fifth booster. Great, terrific. Or I'm never going to get a shot. Good for you. So, in other words, I realized that if I believe in medical choice and uh, knowing what I'm taking and making the choice based on that knowledge, everybody else should be able to make that choice as well.
Hmm.
So I was not interested in providing any kind of medical advice or choice or to anybody else. But I was aware that there were friends that we had who were progressives who knew they couldn't take the shot because of their prior conditions. As soon as they started doing research, they went, oh my God, we're being lied to.
Hmm.
So that's how there's a whole breed of people. I call them red-pilled blues. And these are people who were part of the blue tribe who took the red pill, had their eyes opened, and then the only thing to be careful of at that point is that you don't end up drinking the other guy's Kool-Aid.
Hmm.
Just because you find that your guy's Kool-Aid is poison doesn't mean that you need to drink the other team's Kool-Aid.
Mm. Yeah. Well, then somehow we connected around that issue. I remember
Very early
seeing.
on, I think you may have been one of the first people uh, to venture out and publish something about that. Um, and we kind of found that, oh, wow, you see that too, huh?
Yeah.
It's it's sort of like being able to, somebody, the term conspiracy theorist. My reframe is pattern recognizer.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I just like to see the patterns.
Yeah, it was a hard time for a lot of my supposed friends and supporters, just drank the Kool-Aid and thought I was an idiot. And, a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins and 6 years in the U.S. Public Health Service. And I don't know what's going on. Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, at least we can talk about it more now than back then without getting canceled and encouraged with the research that Kennedy's doing and validating the inconvenient study that Del Bigtree did or revealed in that video. So I think we're turning the corner slowly. Good old Ron
Well, I think
Johnson.
there's a couple of hopeful signs. I mean, well, first of all, it's very, very difficult for people to change their opinion on that, particularly with the relentless assault on Bobby Kennedy. Whatever it is, he had a snake in his hand, whatever it was, they're
Yeah,
they're finding things all the time, and it's just relentless. It's relentless. And so, if anybody is subject to that, um, they hear that 24/7, they're going to believe that.
yeah,
But there is a softening, and a friend of mine, I've got a friend who is living in Michigan. This is 2016, and I'm there on tour. And he voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary and was going to vote for Trump in the election. And he got canceled by all of his progressive friends, except for
yeah.
me. And his family just disowned him. And just recently he said, yeah, we had a family reunion in Florida. And he said, oh, and by the way, where there's no chemtrails. um, in Florida, and he got notes from all the people. Wow, this was the best family reunion ever.
Hmm.
What happened? What happened was, and we figured it out together, that they softened their views about demonizing him. So once
Hmm.
they were not demonizing him, they could actually relate. He didn't go anywhere. He was open to engaging no matter what. But because they demonized and canceled him, and now in this softening period where people forgot, they forgot that they canceled people. They
Hmm.
forgot that they wanted to put us in concentration camps. They forgot all about that, right?
Yeah,
So because they've conveniently forgotten, oh, I'm back with him as our friend and relative. So it's been the softening, but there's never been the reckoning. There's never been the people going, wow, I drank the Kool-Aid and I apologize for how I treated you.
yeah. That's
That's not happening.
not yet. Yeah. Uh, well, anything you'd like to wrap up with? Some words of
Yeah,
wisdom?
right now, my mission right now, my Swami's funny mission, Swami for president, political climate change, warmer hearts and cooler heads to bring left and right, front and center to face the music and dance together. And my progressive colleague, Eleanor LeCain, said something a few years ago that is more true now than ever. And that is that it's no longer left versus right, but it's the oligarchs versus all of us. And so this next movement is to gather the 90 something percent of us who are not sociopaths to hold the system accountable. And my blog called the Signs of the Uprising, and perhaps we can put in a link to that, is
Yeah.
designed to bring left and right, front and center, to face the music and dance together, to turn the funk into function and leave the junk at the junction, combining comedy and the seriousness to actually create a truly transpartisan movement to wake up to the illusion of separation, wise up to the power of loving coherence, grow up from children of God to adults of good, and agents in our own lives and in our own government, and show up on a new playing field, ready to play a new game, intentional mutual benefit. That's the uprising. And the only thing that can counter the coherence, I put that word in parentheses because the dark forces are very coherent. They got their shit together. But the only thing that can counter that coherence is the coherence of fractal spiritual awakening, where people get the connection in their hearts to the divine, begin to spread that through their community. The book that I just finished working on with my friend Richard Flyer, Birthing the Symbiotic Age, lays out a platform and template based on real world successes of how that can happen. So the mission for this next part of my life is to create that movement above and beyond the political divide where people actually will go, wait a minute, it's not this side or that side, it's the system. And the only way that we can handle the divide and conquer is unite and prevail and create an awareness about the truth of that system. Because once the awareness is in place that we've been hoodwinked by a bunch of winking hoods, um, then it essentially busts the trance and the system loses its legitimacy. If it loses its cultural legitimacy, its fall is inevitable.
Hmm. Well said. It's a great summary. So, well, I'm going to wrap up the recording and we'll do a little post analysis and let's see. Okay. Wait a minute. It says